Yo peeps, Staffer here along with Dodo. Week 1 of MPL Malaysia has just concluded, and so it is time for us to do our MPL MY Season 15 Week 1 recap and catch up, where we talk all about the ups and downs, the good and bad, and everything in between that happened in Week 1 of a new season of MPL MY. We're gonna talk about what's good and what's bad about the players, about the teams, what needs to be changed, what needs to be improved, what needs to be kept the same, and just generally share my thoughts and opinions about the state of the MPL MY meta and the level of competition for Week 1. And for those of you who may not have had time to keep up with the games happening over the weekend, don't worry, here is a short recap. The first game of the week and the season was the Grand Finals rematch between SRGOG and Team Vamos. And in Game 1, Vamos was actually leading by quite a bit until Innocent decided enough is enough, gets the earliest Savage ever recorded in MPL history, and saves the game for his team, and then proceeds to beat the shit out of Vamos in game number 2 as well. The second match of day 1 was between our two new MAL newcomers, DX Seoul Esports and Ocean Black. DX Seoul won game 1 because their draft had better catch and teamfight, Ocean Black won game 2 because their comp had better catch and damage, and then DX Seoul won game 3 by picking Khalid and Hilda and beating the shit out of their opponents from minute 1. The third match of day 1 was between Team Ray and JP Niners. JP Niners won game 1 quite one-sidedly and then proceeded to grief themselves by picking Kalea with no burst mid laner for the next 2 games alongside a weird EXP lane choice, giving Team Ray the win. The first match of day 2 was between Homeboys and AERO Esports, and Homeboys basically proved themselves the better team here with better synergy, coordination, communication, and overall player mechanics, taking the series in a clean 2-0. In the second match of day 2, MV did the exact same thing to Todak by being the better team with smarter drafts, better communication, more aggro, and just generally better game plans. The final match of the week was a tight series between Team Vamos and Team Ray, where Team Vamos was able to discover the secret to victory by dragging Game 1 and Game 3 to exactly 22 minutes long, making sure the casters and MPL production team get to go home from work as late as humanly possible. For those of you who just wanted to know what happened in Week 1, that's all for the recap. Thanks for watching. But if you want to know more about my opinions and details about what happened during each of these matches, do watch the rest of the video. You're still here? Good. Let's talk details. Starting off with our first match of Week 1, it was our Grand Finals rematch, Champion Derby, top 2 from Season 14, SRGOG versus Vamos. And I think a lot of us were hoping that these two teams would have demonstrated a good amount of improvement since last season, since this season started a little bit later this year. And I have to say I am a little bit disappointed. SRG did win in a clean sweep, 2-0 against Vamos, which is all kind of unexpected in its own right, because I thought it would go all 3 games, but I feel like even with that, SRG is not quite in perfect state yet. I think there's still some cleaning up that needs to happen and some improving that needs to happen, because game 1, they were actually losing quite notably early on against Team Vamos, and it was only because Innocent really locked in, got the farm in the background, and then got a Savage, the earliest Savage ever, Game 1 of an MPL season, breaking records. This man, Innocent, still in my opinion one of the best players in the world, honestly. Maybe a bit of bias there, but just looking at his performance, I don't think you can really blame me. But yes, unfortunately, I do feel like there are some things SRG needs to work on. I think especially their early game, they've always been kind of weak in the early game. They're really good mid to late game. Their team fighting, their positioning, their macro, their micro is so good once they have some time under their belt. But the first couple of minutes is where they are most vulnerable, because they try to play fairly aggressive and then there's some cracks in their approach that you can actually take advantage of. So against teams that specialize in early game, you can see that becoming a problem. And I think a lot of that comes down to the local mid trio, right? Yum, Sky, Stormy, all very, very good mechanically gifted players, but I do feel like they've stagnated a little bit since they first really crashed the wave as SRG. Right, I think there's a lot of improvement that can still be achieved, and I'm hoping that they haven't hit that wall just yet, because this is still our strongest team for sure, right? Innocent is still awesome. He's solid, he's consistent, no matter what happens, even if the rest of his team isn't doing well, he will always be there. And I think Cram is definitely filling in his position very well too. I love the flexibility of this man being able to play both utility frontline EXP laners and catch EXP laners. And he is now the new captain of SRG as well, so being that voice, that shot caller, is a very important role that so far he looks to be doing pretty well in. As for Vamos though, there are some things I need to point out, because I feel like this team has not just stagnated, it feels like they've kind of regressed. Because they've always been known to be an aggressive team, and they still are. They won like early against SRG in game 1 for a reason, but then in game 2 SRG adjusted their draft, which very happy that they did that, you know. I always love to see teams being creative with their adjustments. And then they just immediately went for a gank before the first minute mark, I believe, and completely dumpstered Vamos. It was a one-sided slaughter all the way from start to finish, and that creates some questions. Like, Vamos was one of the teams that used to be able to like come back from a deficit, but I'm not seeing that this season. It's like, even their early game doesn't feel the cleanest, because like we can see even in their match later against Team Ray here, right? I'll talk about that later, but they actually lost some early games against Team Ray as well. So one of their strengths isn't good enough even in the MPL scene. And then while I really love their macro in the mid to late game, like whenever they're making something happen on one side of the map, there's someone split pushing on the other side. That's why this team takes towers so quickly. Their late game is making me question things, and a lot. I don't want to have to call out a single player, but Netsfresco is not improving. In fact, I'm sorry to say it feels like he's worse than before, because he's always been a like slow farming style gold laner, which is perfectly fine, perfectly valid playstyle. You know, you get 3 items, then you become a beast, you join your team, you win the game. I don't see that happening, because Nets isn't the type that wins gold lane outright. He doesn't go for that. He is more of a slow farmer. But when he farms, I don't see the impact either. In the late game, it doesn't feel like he's doing enough damage, and then his positioning leaves a bit to be desired as well. He's getting caught out quite often, or he's not like properly where he needs to be in the team fight to be dishing out DPS, and because of that, it feels like Team Vamos has difficulty closing out the game even in the later stages. Oh, that's something that really needs to be fixed up, because this is supposed to be one of the strongest teams in Malaysia, and right now I'm not seeing that. So I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed in the first match. I thought it'd be a lot more hype. I thought it would be closer, but that's not what happened, and I'm hoping that improves going forward. For game 2, our second match, it was between our 2 MAL contenders. We have DxSoul Esports and Ocean Black. And this is the first time MPL has had 2 new MAL teams, because DxSoul, our second place from MAL last season, beat Team Hawk to claim a second spot. And since these are 2 very fresh teams, right, they have a lot of newbies, a lot of rookies on their roster, I think the game kind of went as expected, you know. Both sides kind of played very safe, very textbook, you know, very direct, and their drafting as well is very straightforward. They have one singular goal, one singular gameplay style. They'll try to make that work, and if it doesn't, you see them kind of flounder, kind of scatter a little bit, become very safe, very reactive, very anxious in the way they move around the map. That goes for both of these teams. Like game 1, DxSoul won because they had team fight, right? They had Eve, Gatot, and Cho, and Iritel. Good burst, good catch, good zone control. Ocean Black didn't have that because like the Khalid was falling off later on. Granger and Suyo didn't have enough damage output. Second game, Ocean Black had better teamfight catch and damage because of their draft, which DxSoul did not have. And so it was purely being decided by draft this game. Except for game 3, where DxSoul actually decided to go heal that Khalid, invade level like early, and snowball the game. That's why it ended so fast. And I love that. I love that they were creative enough to change that up. I wish more teams were willing to do that. So I gotta give some props to DxSoul. And we know this team got into the top 4 of Piala Esports as well, despite being an MAL team. So we still gotta give them props. You know, I can see a lot of potential. I know a lot of people were hoping to see DJY playing for Ocean Black, but well, let's just dream for now, right? Let's just cross our fingers and pray. But yeah. Next up, Team Ray versus JP Niners. Oh, this match was a doozy, I'll tell you now. If you guys go back and watch the cast and listen properly to what we're saying, you will realize that we have no idea what we're saying. Our brain cells just flew out the window watching this. Because game 1, actually was pretty close initially, but then JP9ers eked out the advantage, and from the look of it, I thought, ooh, this team has improved a lot. I'm seeing better coordination, better communication. Lolil isn't like jumping forward and getting picked off like as often as before. I like the general like synergy, and I thought, ooh, JP9ers might be able to clean sweep this one, And then they drafted so weird for the next 2 games. The next 2 games, JP9ers drafted Kalea with a non-burst mid laner. They drafted Zusin in game 2, Sicilion in game 3. These are not good combos. You can't really combo with Kalea properly with these heroes because you just don't have enough burst damage to properly execute on it. But what was even worse was the EXP lane picks, because they put Sabat on Arlet in game 2 and then Valentina EXP in game 3. The game 2 Arlet just kept missing final slashes. Like, I know this used to be a Sabat pocket pick, but there's a reason that Arlet doesn't get picked up much anymore. He's a bit of a weird middle stage where he's not particularly good at any one thing. And Team Ray actually drafted a really good draft to counter it, right? They had like Jawhead, they had Joy, they had Eve, they had Wanwan, so many heroes that just like can be immune to final slash and then immediately counter him. Like, I gotta give props. I love that Team Ray was willing to pick up slightly non-meta picks that they're comfortable with and were appropriate for the situation. And they really punished the Niners because it's such a waste. Game 2, their draft started with Kalea, Zusin, Suyo. Like, holy shit, what an incredible opening. And then they couldn't close it out properly. Part of it is because Team Ray actually banned well, but then in game 3, they like locked in Valentina immediately after seeing Lucas without checking whether it was going to be jungle or EXP. Lo and behold, it was jungle, so the Valentina counter didn't work that well anymore. And then the rest of them just floundered the same way. Again, like, I'm really impressed by Team Ray so far. I think they are one of the teams that impressed me and the MPL community the most because they definitely have improved. They were always a really like synergistic team, like this 5-man, and they haven't changed their roster either, so you can see the chemistry is still there, with the exception of AJ, who's kind of swapped out in the mid lane, and it still works. They're still like moving together really well. Their early game is one of the strongest in the league. I think their late game might be a little less consistent because they often death ball, they just group 5-man, so their split pushing is not as good. But in this particular position, JP9 is just kind of griefed the draft, and it's so weird to see because they have pubs and antagonists. These are 2 accomplished coaches and analysts. They should be good at drafting. I don't know if they were experimenting with something or just underestimating Team Ray, but that cannot happen going forward. But yeah, impressed with Team Ray, disappointed with JP9 is. For day 2 of week 1, it started with Homeboys versus AERO Esports. And this is actually kind of an interesting game. Looks like Wikipedia hasn't updated the draft yet, but both these teams have 2 new imports, right? Homeboys has Ivan and Vel, and then AERO has Rindo and Kosei. And basically the question for this particular game is which team has acclimated and synergized better with their new players and imports. But AERO does definitely have more new players, right? They actually have a couple of MAL players coming up, so you can see that there's a lack of experience there compared to the Homeboys. But even so, Homeboys felt more aggressive, more coordinated. There was a definite game plan in the way they were approaching like the game and deciding which objectives to go for. And I feel like a lot of their players were independently mechanically skilled. Like MelQT, Ivan, Vel, all could make plays on their own, Izanami as well, without really needing to rely on the rest of their team. So they could spread their web across the map more effectively. Comparatively, AERO kind of needed to be together, and whenever they weren't together, they became very easy pickings. And when they fell behind, you could see that, honestly, they started playing a little bit like the MAL teams, you know? I honestly feel like AERO Esports might have had the worst performance just based on their gameplay last week, even against a team like Ocean Black. Because they just felt so scrambled, like they hadn't played together properly before. And I don't know how much training this team has had before MPL, but it didn't feel very good to look at because I hope that AERO would be an interesting dark horse team. But I will say I'm very impressed with Homeboys. You know, there are players that I really like on the Homeboy side. Izanami, MelQT, and Veldora, Vel now, and Ivan are definitely favorites from overseas from a while ago as well. I think they've all meshed together quite well. But the only thing that I want to see them improve on is actually playing a bit more together, because they do oftentimes make plays on their own, which has worked right now, but what happens when they face off against a stronger team? That's what I want to see. And AERO Esports, this is a little bit of a tough spot here. I can really see the inexperience of playing together kicking in, and that needs to be fixed. Then we have the Todak Monster Vicious game, and I think a lot of us were expecting this game to be very close, right? This is our IESF representative, and Monster Vicious was already a very strong contender last season. In fact, these two teams faced off against each other in the playoffs last season, and Todak came out on top. So we all thought that this would be a close, like, best of 3 series. And then Monster Vicious just dumpstered them. Like, it's not like Todak played too badly. I would say, like, they still played better than, you know, AERO Esports, Ocean Black, DX Seoul. But Monster Vicious, whoo, they were vicious. They actually were. Clean drafts, clean gameplay, synergy is there, catches were there, they were split pushing, they were team fighting, they were excellently executing on their power spikes. This is literally the only team that used Kalea properly. They drafted her with the Farsa both times, then they had proper engage and disengage mechanics where heroes like Hanzo got taught, Granger, you know, and they did really well. They were basically strong at every stage of the game to the point that Todak could not do anything against them. Every single player of Monster Vicious was performing here, and I'm really happy to see it, you know? Especially since they did switch out one member. You know, this is a team that's been together a long time. They finally switched out a member. You might think, oh, will that affect the chemistry? Doesn't look like it. I think they're meshing pretty well. Todak, on the other hand, we have to note, they're not playing with Yanlord in the roster this time around, and they're playing with D instead of Saihin. I still don't know how to pronounce his name properly, but it means that they do still have some players on the bench that they haven't utilized yet. I imagine they'll probably do a bit of switching up after this, because you could tell that there was a bit of an experience. They still played okay. It's not like they were bad. Monster Vicious was just so much better here, and I'm really excited to see that. Like, this is the only team in the last couple seasons of MPL that has actually taken games from SRG. So, you know, excited for that one. And then lastly, we have Vamos versus Team Ray. And this, based on Season 14 performance, should not have been a close match. I was 100% expecting Vamos to clean sweep this one, but it was actually difficult for them. And we have to note, the 2 games that Vamos won had to be dragged out to 22 minutes, both of them. In comparison, Team Ray won Game 2 in 12 minutes, right? So that brings back the question again, why is Vamos not, like, why does it feel like they're weaker than before? Why are they not able to close out games when they were one of the best teams at doing so in Season 14? And again, I have to question Nets, you know, like, in many of these, in both Game 1 and Game 2, Vamos was leading by quite a bit in the mid-game. I think one of them, they even had a 10k gold lead. And Team Ray still extended the game for another like 5 to 8 minutes. That is not supposed to happen. Like, Vamos really needs to lock it in. And then in Game 2, they just got destroyed again. Because, like, the draft is, you know, not really doing them any favors. They don't have any early game burst at all other than Suyo. And no setup other than Kalea. So, they are really things that Vamos needs to work on. I am really hoping that they improve, because this is a team that I expected to do very well after their performance last season and with changes to their roster. In comparison though, Team Ray is a team that I thought might have difficulty this season based on their gameplay last season, and they're coming online. Like, damn, I gotta give them props for that. So yeah, that's my thoughts about like all of the matches thus far. Yeah, do share in the comments what you guys think about it, and if you guys agree or not about the things that these players might need to improve on and what we need to see from them in week number 2. I'm also going to take the opportunity to add a small little segment at the end here to shout out some maybe some players that don't get as much spotlight as the rest, because we have MVPs, right? We even had a Dream Team of the Week. I think that's a new system we have this season, and I want to try and shout out some of the players that don't get a lot of like MVP screens or get picked for Dream Team, but I still feel are performing somewhat well, right? And for this week, I want to highlight 2 goal laners and 2 roamers. The 2 goal laners are Trap and MelQT. I think Trap has a very interesting hero pool. He's surprisingly consistent, even though he's not too flashy. He knows the job that needs to be done, is willing to play with the team to get it. He also was ranked 1 for most kill participation as a gold laner, so I think that really speaks for something. As for MelQT, I just love the aggression of the man, you know? It's not really that often that you get gold laners who are particularly like loud spoken, you know? But MelQT is definitely one of them, and I love that he's capable of making independent plays on the map by himself without needing to rely on his team to set up for him. As for the 2 roamers I want to highlight, it's actually the 2 roamers from the DX versus OB matchup. Yep, I want to highlight Rasi as well as Super Susu. Rasi, because he really is a voice of reason. Like, you can tell that he is providing direction, vision, guidance to the team. He's always opening up the map and setting things up. He's able to play both bulky frontliners and setup frontliners. And honestly, I love the impact that he's creating and the effect that he's bringing to a team like DX Seoul, who doesn't have that much MPL experience. In comparison, while OB did lose the match, I was actually quite impressed with what I saw from Super Susu. Because similarly to Rasi, he can play like frontline tank like Hylos, and he can also play set-up mechanical catchers like Cho. Right? We actually saw both of those being played by both of these players, and I was actually really happy with the way that Super Susu was setting up for his team. It's just that the rest of OB was having a little bit of difficulty following up sometimes, and he definitely wasn't the most consistent, but yeah, that's basically what I want to say about some of these players. Hopefully you guys agree. And if you guys enjoyed this recap, do let me know in the comments, right? So that I can maybe improve, see what I need to change in terms of this recap, like for the next week as well. So yeah, but week 1, I did have a good time. I did lose some brain cells, you know, by the end of day 1 because there were very suspicious things going on. But it was a good time. It was fun, and I hope that you guys had fun as well. Do drop a like, comment, and subscribe if you guys want to see more of this type of content. And yeah, that stuff. And the Dodo signing out. See you guys on the next video.